Hi everyone, how's it going? Sorry about
Yeah.
that, was a few minor technical issues. Yeah, sorry, apologies for being late. So yeah, we'll get started. But no, wanted to thank all of you for joining today. Obviously, I appreciate your busy schedules. But yeah, as the weather's pretty miserable out, thought it was a perfect day for a webinar. So yeah, I thought we'd get started on that. So obviously, thank you for all joining today. Really appreciate your time. So yeah, appreciate everyone there. But yeah, just wanted to introduce my the speaker today, Karen Fang. So I'll let Karen give a little bit of intro later. But just from my side, yeah, I'm sure all of you know who she is. But if you don't, yeah, Karen has over 10 plus years of experience within the analytics world. Some really impressive companies from Babylon, Farfetch, Essence. She's built, led teams, optimized analytics processes, and influenced growth strategies, really by partnering with these senior stakeholders with marketing, commercial, operations, product, and engineering. I think her expertise as well within the health tech, luxury, fashion, e-commerce industry as well as really stood out. And yeah, was really excited to get Karen on board today, just because yeah, we both felt stakeholder management is a really important topic, and it's a topic that we feel gets skirted over a little bit. Everyone does a lot of talks, webinars, in-person events based on the technical work. But yeah, we think stakeholder management is really important. And yeah, definitely feel like it's something that everyone can learn something from. Before we do dive into the Q&A today, I did want to give a little bit of an introduction about Xcede. I'm sure most of you know who we are because see a few familiar faces on here. But yeah, just a little bit of a quick intro. So we're a global recruitment agency. So we have offices in 4 continents across the UK, Spain, South Africa, Singapore, New York, and Germany. We place around 2,500 candidates annually, based on last year's figures. We've got over 180 expert recruiters within the business as well. And one thing to highlight as well is how everyone works in a specialist field. So, for example, myself, I've been at Xcede for nearly 3 years now. My specialism is within digital product marketing, growth analytics. And yeah, I just feel like these webinars are really good just to give back to the community. I've worked with Karen as a candidate and a client over the last few years. So yeah, I thought it was a really good opportunity to obviously bring the community together. On our specialisms, so Xcede is broken into 5 areas. So data, product, software, cloud, and cyber. If you all get your binoculars out, you can see in the bottom left-hand corner is the area that I specialize in within digital and product analytics. And yeah, we will cover various areas as well. The team, the one thing, yeah, I really wanted to highlight as well is the experience within this team. As you can see on the screen, there's 3, 4, 5 people there, all 10 plus years experience within data and analytics. And yeah, if there is anyone on there today that yeah you want to speak to or haven't spoken to before, please do reach out afterwards to me, and yeah, we can have a chat and yeah, go further. Salary survey, again, if you got your phones, please do yeah, take a picture of the link. But yeah, this is a survey we have collated over the last 12 months across 3 and a bit thousand vacancies and various different industries as well. And yeah, really gives you a flavour of where the market's at, and obviously for yourself, if you're looking or hiring, a really good opportunity for you to yeah, dive into where the market's at and how to go from there. And yeah, I think as well, just to note as well, some of these salaries might be 10% below the market. However, it just is good to yeah, get a bit of an estimate really about where the market's at. So yeah, enough about me now. On to the main event for today. Yeah, I'd like to introduce Karen, just give you a bit of an intro, and then yeah, we'll dive into the questions.
Yeah, thank you, Paul. Sorry, Daniel, for the intro. Yeah, thank you. And sorry for being late, and thanks everyone for waiting. So I guess a bit of introduction for myself, like Daniel mentioned. So I started my career in the energy industry, and then moved on to the tourism industry, later on digital marketing, e-commerce, and latest was health tech. So in my latest role, I basically oversaw the business insights function. So that was using insights to help the business make decisions. My team mainly consisted of data analysts, but at different periods of time, I also had data scientists and data engineers either moved or seconded into my team. So yeah, like I interacted daily with senior stakeholders, like C-levels, as well as VPs, heads of different departments. I think part of my role was also to really upskill and coach my teams to be able to deal with senior stakeholders directly and to upskill them, because I think, you know, I wouldn't want to be the bottleneck for my team, and I shouldn't be. And also, it's being able to deal with senior people is one of the most important skill set, I think, as well. And then I think over time, I've also observed quite a lot of struggles and from people, and including myself, in terms of how to manage stakeholders effectively. So I'm glad that today I have the opportunity to share with you all the mistakes that I've seen before, as well as the learnings.
Okay, thanks, that Karen. So yeah, so we've got some questions now that we've prepared beforehand. So I'm going to ask Karen, and she's got a few answers for me. I've got some additional questions as well, which you've all kindly put on the link today. If there is anything that you do want to ask that comes up within some of what Karen says, please do put it in the chat section. Then afterwards, if we have time, we'll try and answer it as best as possible. But yeah, it's going to be a Q&A today. So yeah, very interactive, and yeah, hope you'll enjoy. So Karen, what does stakeholder management mean to you?
Yeah, I think to put simply, stakeholder management is being able to build and maintain good relationships with the people who have the most impact on your work. And that could be people from your internal teams, that could be people that are external to your teams as well. And I would say there are two really fundamental elements to being able to kind of build and maintain that relationship. And number one is to be able to understand and align on incentives. And then number two is to build trust. And aligning understanding incentives basically means that you will try to understand why they want to do something, and what they're trying to do it for, and what's the impact on them. And in terms of building trust is really, if you already have trust built with somebody, it just smooths things out a lot. And especially if later on you want to communicate a difficult message, it makes the conversation a lot easier. So, yeah.
Cool. And could you expand on why incentive is important, and give some examples on some common mistakes you've seen on understanding stakeholder incentives?
Yeah, I would say that everything starts with incentive, right? So if a stakeholder comes to you and asks you to do something, and it's it's very important to understand why they're asking that. Are they asking you because they were told by their senior managers to do that, or are they asking you because a C-level or somebody really senior really cares about it, or is it because they are personally interested in knowing an answer to something? So I think it is important to understand, because that helps you figure out what should be the priority and what's the impact on the things that they're asking you to deliver. And in terms of common mistakes, I would say number one would be, I'll cover 2 points. I think number one would be like treating everything as a priority as they come in, and without actually taking a step back to ask the question and figure out the context. And because if you do that, like I've definitely seen people, as soon as the request comes in, and they just delve into it and start doing it as soon as possible, because maybe that's what the stakeholder asked you to do. And but I think the danger of doing that is that you will be overcommitting yourself to lots of work very quickly, and you'll be overloaded very quickly. And we all know that resource is extremely limited. So if you look around, and I speak to people, I don't remember any team has ever told me, oh yeah, no, we've got enough people and we're not stretched. So everyone is always stretched in every company. So there is never enough resource. So you really want to be treating how you allocate your time quite carefully. And they simply like not every request can be a priority. So you've got to be able to say no at some point. And I would say, like, I know saying no is difficult, but it is one of the most important skills in technical roles. And there are different ways of saying no. People might be afraid because it comes from the senior people, but you don't always have to say, no, I can't do it, and full stop, right? So interestingly enough, I think being able to ask the right questions is also a way to help you say no as well. And to give you an example on that, so when I first joined Babylon Health, I was trying to understand, the pain points, the challenges from my stakeholders. So I went to one of the stakeholders and I asked, could you let me know, like, what other things do you think analysts should deliver? What are things that we can do to help you? Basically, I was asking for a wish list. And then they gave me a list and I said, okay, out of all of them, which one do you think is the highest priority? And they pointed at one. So I say, okay, so could you help me understand why? Give me a bit of context on why that is important. So they gave me an answer, but effectively, it was saying that they think it was important because it was mentioned in one of the CMO meetings. The CMO thought it was important and it was interesting to know. I thought, you know what, that is fair enough, but I want to know a bit more on if analytics team are able to deliver this piece today, if the results are available today, what are the actions and what are the decisions that would enable the business to make, right? So, and also like what are the levers the business can really pull to maybe make a change, make a difference or something like that. So basically, I want to know what are the actions. And so they thought about it and they said, actually, we can't probably do much with it in the short term. So it's probably a nice to have piece in the longer term. So just by having that conversation later on, I think they came to realize themselves that it's not an immediate high priority compared to a lot of the other things analysts have already got on the plate. So then it was just naturally deprioritized, and it wasn't much of a disagreement or anything like that. So the reason I want to say is because I don't think a lot of times stakeholders, when they come to you, they're very, very clear themselves on why they want certain things and what exactly they want. So being able to ask the questions to really understand and figure out what context is quite helpful. And I guess the second point I want to say is that a mistake that I've seen people trip on before is that there was sometimes the assumption that stakeholders automatically care about what you care about, and or they should care about what you care about. Now, this could sound a bit harsh, and I guess I'm not trying to say that stakeholders shouldn't care about what other people care about, but it is more that by automatically assuming that all the time, it means that you run into a risk of not really understanding the priority very clearly, and maybe you are not getting the adequate support that you might need from them. So this is a alignment of incentive kind of a problem. I would say I've seen people asking stakeholders for information before, or like they were waiting for stakeholders to come back to them on a question, but they were not really getting an answer. They were waiting for a long time, and then they felt blocked and also started to develop some kind of unhappiness towards the stakeholder, which is not a very helpful situation in terms of like relationship and trust building, right? So when that happens, I think a lot of the times it's because the stakeholder was not aware, or they were not convinced on why it's important, why they should care about it, and what's the impact on them, right? Because they are also human and they have got a lot on their plate. They can only focus on a few things. So it can't be that they can also answer everyone's question, and yeah. So I think in that case, there is some work that needs to be done on your side to kind of get that buy-in, to really try to convince them and explain to them why it is important for them to help you and why helping you could benefit them. So I think some work being done upfront to get them on board is really important. So I think, yeah, these are the 2 points I want to cover in terms of incentives. Number one, don't overcommit yourself. Don't try to like say yes to everything as they come in, and do actually take a step back and take a minute to ask for more details and context. And number two is like get the buy-in first, I would say, and then really get incentives aligned, and then it's helpful later on to get them to support you.
And just a follow up really from that question, and I think it's probably a really important point, especially in any work of life, saying no to a stakeholder. Do you think that comes with experience? Like when you first started out, would you have said no to a senior stakeholder, or is that something that you wish you kind of learnt from young? Yeah, it'd be good to know just because it's one of them things where someone a year into their job or 10 years probably has a different approach to saying no.
Yeah, it's a really good question. I definitely wish this is something I've gained more experience on when I was younger and early on in my career. It was, for me at least, it was definitely more difficult to say no at the start of the career than I am not now. And then I observed the same pattern in my own team before, like the junior analysts were like they felt more uncomfortable. And I think sometimes it is to do with how familiar you are with your stakeholders, like how long you've interacted with your stakeholders. If I'm new to a company, for example, like being able to say no immediately to somebody senior, it might not be comfortable for me immediately as well. So I do think it depends on different situations. People might feel more or less comfortable. It does come with experience in the sense that if you've dealt with a lot of different personalities, and then you start to see a pattern, and like there are different ways you can deal with it to say no. But I would say one of the really useful things to remember is that saying no, like I said before, is not just say no, full stop, and that's it, like go away kind of thing. And it really, what stakeholders a lot of time want to see is that you say no, but at the same time you were trying to say, okay, I can't do this, but this is what I can do to help. So what stakeholders don't really like to hear, and I get that feedback sometimes from stakeholders to some of my team members, that they just don't want to be hearing, oh, we can't do something. The question is, what can you do, right? So they could be asking something that's really not possible to do, because maybe they don't have all the details or the technical knowledge in terms of how to make that happen, and it could be just impossible, right? But then try to say, oh, I think this is impossible, but if I understand you correctly on where you're trying to get to, these are the sort of things we can do. These are the alternatives that I think might be useful to you. I think that also opens up that kind of conversation and show that willingness to help. I think that's what they want to hear.
No, I think that's really helpful, and yeah, especially anyone starting out their career or any really walk of life, because saying no to someone is always very difficult. Obviously depending on who they are. So next question as well. So what about the common mistakes on building trust? Yeah, good to find out a bit more.
Yeah, so build trust. So I think trust is basically built by you consistently meeting or exceeding your stakeholders' expectation, right? So if a stakeholder asks you for something, and then they should be able to trust you and should be able to have the confidence that you are able to deliver something on time and in good quality. I think when I talk about delivery, I think in technical roles, a lot of people think about delivery just as a piece of technical results or technical delivery, but or such as like dashboard analysis or product feature, but it's not always the case. I think communication, they sometimes forget that it's also part of the delivery, and it's really important. We're all humans. I think how we interact and communicate with others sometimes can make or break a relationship. So, but this is something that tends to be forgotten in technical roles. So I think for today, like in terms of the common mistakes, I want to focus on the communication part. I would say the number one killer in trust is not giving enough notice to a stakeholder when a deadline is going to be missed. So I think there could be many legitimate reasons on why a deadline could be missed, right? A lot of them are probably external reasons. Somebody is sick, or you're waiting for information, or some strategic things changed in the company. So there could be many, many reasons that are not your fault at all. However, I would say that communicating the delay is your part responsibility 100%. So being able to communicate that as soon as possible. Like I would say, like no one likes last minute surprises, right? So we don't want to find out in the morning that something is not going to be delivered in the afternoon when you are actually expecting. We don't like that ourselves. So it's like if I imagine it's like walking out of door expecting sunny weather, but it's met with pouring rain, and then that's just not fun for anybody. So I don't want to be doing it to any other people as well. So I think I always told my team to treat deadlines extremely seriously as our #1 priority, like because that's really important to establish trust, especially from the very beginning. What you want to do is that if a deadline is going to be missed, you want to be able to give them, or if there's a risk of deadline being missed, you want to give them that heads up as early as possible, and also at the same time communicate a alternative timeline, what is actually realistic for you to do. I think as long as you've tried your best and you've showed that you've done everything you can, you show that you are very serious in helping them to achieve what they want to achieve, then anyone reasonable will be quite understanding and support on your work as well. So that's #1. I think #2 is that a lot of people expect that stakeholders would automatically remember all the technical details that have been communicated. So not only were they communicated in a technical way, but they also remember that they expect stakeholders to remember that they can remember all the technical things that were communicated. So I think basically I previously have seen analysts adding a lot of technical caveats on, oh, maybe this analysis is not related to this situation, or it doesn't cover certain, so almost like small prints to emails and presentation slides. And they've added those things in writing, and that's it. They thought that, yeah, job done, because stakeholders can read them and digest those things themselves. Well, a lot of stakeholders are reasonably technical, and they will have an interest in reading all those details. Not everyone is, and not everyone will read the things, unfortunately. So I have previously seen stakeholders then coming back to ask about certain things and think, oh, why is this not done in that way? Why is this not answering my question? But then like the analyst was getting puzzled and thinking, well, I've already written them in emails and slides, and they could have read it themselves and understand it. Yeah, like not a lot of stakeholders actually care about a lot of those detailed technical things, especially if they're senior. They really just want to know everything on a high level. So I would say that just putting into like emails and slides is just not enough, especially if you really want somebody to digest your information, to really understand it and to be able to remember it. So what you want to do in that kind of situation is that, by the way, when I say something important, like important information, is the kind of information that will change the direction of a decision, i.e., it's so important that knowing versus not knowing the information will mean that somebody might make a different decision, right? So if it's that important, you want to make sure that you communicate it as many times as possible in different formats. So that's emails, slides, conference pages, and then always follow up with the information verbally. So what you might want to do is to like set up a call with the stakeholders to try to walk them through, explain to them what this means and why it's important for them to remember it. So yeah, I think that's very important.
Okay. And on obviously the common mistakes on building trust, do you think the pandemic has had an impact on that? A lot of people work from home, not actually meeting who they're speaking to, especially senior stakeholders or any stakeholders somehow. Do you think that's had a bit of an impact on a generation of being in an office 5 days a week and just grabbing someone for a call or a chat in the office rather than over Zoom, can't get hold of them, waiting half hour, 40 minutes, etc.?
Yeah, I think at least at the beginning of the pandemic, I definitely see that being a struggle, because everybody wasn't very used to that kind of work mode, right? So I remember thinking to myself, I really missed the moments where when I was in the office, I could just tap somebody on the shoulder and say, hey, I've got a question for you, or I've got something interesting to show you. And it doesn't have to be a 30-minute meeting. I didn't have to go through loads of people's calendars and find out, is there like a 30-minute slot for me just to be able to ask something and to be able to have a quick discussion. So I also saw that struggling new joiners at the beginning of the pandemic as well. So somebody new joined my team, and it was reasonably senior as well, and very experienced, very smart. But I noticed that they were a bit reluctant to ask questions and to participate in meetings. And obviously that was not very helpful if their job was that, in analytics, and they were to build relationships with stakeholders, right? So what I was doing at the time, I think it was just a bit of like, there was a bit of a distance because they were not able to interact with people physically, right? So I had to like prompt them in meetings and say, hey, do you have any thoughts, or do you have a question and stuff? But I think over time, like as people they were getting more used to this kind of work mode, and I think it was fine. And also it comes with how long the person has been with the company and what projects they've collaborated on together and stuff. So I don't really see that being a problem anymore. I think the people are getting more used to this mode. But I think at the beginning, certainly, there was a struggle there.
Yeah, no, I know it was a challenging time for all of us, wasn't it? But yeah, so apart from obviously the common stakes you mentioned above, is there any other advice you'd like to give to the audience?
Yeah, I would say it's really to kind of do some work on the organization chart. So speak to people and understand how your stakeholders interact with each other, what's the dynamic of the company, and who is kind of who are the decision makers, who would have more influence on your work, and who can support you on certain things you want to do. Especially if you're new to the company, you want to know, like what positions they hold, and how do they normally interact, and how would they normally interact with analytics or your teams, right? So I came across like a Wikipedia page on stakeholder management recently, and I think there is a section that's really interesting, and it basically categorizes stakeholders into 4 categories. The first category is that the people who are in high power, but they are they are also highly interested, right? So high power, highly interested people. So those people are your priority stakeholders. You want to really keep them fully engaged and spend most of your effort into like meeting their like asks and and maintaining that kind of relationship. These people usually are decision makers and very senior levels. And then the second category is high power, less interested people. Again, these people also can be decision makers, very, very senior too, because high power, right? But you probably wouldn't want to boil those people with lots of details. They probably have, they're interested, but they don't need to be in on your projects all the time. So you want to be very succinct with your communication with them and give them what they want very quickly. And the third category is low power but interested people. These people can be really good business partners, and they can be your allies, and they can supply you with a lot of important details. So it could be that you want to sense check what you've done with them because they're very interested and they could really help you. So they are the people good to have on your side. And the fourth category, which you probably have guessed, which is low power and less interested people. The advice is just to monitor those people. You don't have to spend a lot of effort and time into engaging with them. But again, don't bore them with like loads of details. They probably are only like wanting to know what's kind of going on. You want to keep the connection alive, but don't spend too much time on it, I would say. The other advice I would say, like obviously today we talked quite a bit about how to meet your stakeholders' needs, right? How to satisfy your stakeholder, how to build a good relationship with them. I would say you could do everything right, and you could try your best, but sometimes, and I would say it is almost inevitable sometimes, that you come across difficult people. Hopefully everyone you interact with are at least reasonable, so that they can see logic, they can make decisions rationally, they at least can understand where you're coming from. But if you are coming across somebody who's unreasonable, just refusing to collaborate, what you also want to do is to not kind of suffer in silence, but also like start maybe document the bad behaviors and start an audit trail, and then speak to management if necessary, and even your HR partners if the situation is severe. Because I think when it comes to work and work environment, right, you want it to be a healthy environment, and there's nothing more important than your physical mental health. I think it's important to recognize situations where, you know, it's crossing that boundary and you really need to do something about it.
Cool. No, that's really insightful, and yeah, I'm sure a lot of people have taken a lot from today. So I've got a few questions now that have been kindly sent over to us, and so a couple that I've made as well. If there is anyone else that has any questions, please pop it in the chat. And obviously I can speak to Karen. If you don't feel comfortable, then obviously please share it with me afterwards. And yeah, Karen will happily have a chat with a few of you. So one of the questions that I did get through was really traditional on, if you could start your career again, Karen, what is that one piece of advice you would really give that your early career self about like managing stakeholders, and yeah, really into that more senior roles? Like how would you do it again if you could talk to Karen 10 years ago?
Yeah, that makes sense. I think, to be honest with you, a lot of the mistakes I talked about probably made all of them. So I would say just to really stay calm and know that not everyone will agree with you all the time. I think when I was early in my career, I was sometimes get quite frustrated when I was trying to communicate something, and I felt like this was the right thing to do, but the others were just not seeing it, or they would just disagree with me, or if they called me out publicly in a meeting, I could feel quite uncomfortable, not knowing. I guess my immediate response at the time would be, okay, panic. What should I do? And not actually thinking, maybe let me look at it objectively. Maybe they have an interesting point to say, and let me try to dig out a bit more on why they would disagree, and then really have kind of be brave to have that kind of discussion, like almost like a further, more elaborate discussion on that point. So I think that was probably one of the things, because I remember like a couple of years ago, I was in a meeting, and I was trying to propose a project to our CMO, and it all kind of made sense. I got buy-in from people who works on the CMO already, and I also had buy-in from the analytics team. So I was really CMO was the only person I was trying to convince. And but after I actually was presenting it, halfway through, the CMO said, Karen, I know what you're trying to say, but I fundamentally disagree with you, because I just don't think this is going to work. So I was like, I think early on in my career, somebody like who's so senior call me out would probably be like, oh my God, what should I do? But at that time, I actually just thought, yeah, that's okay. I appreciate your feedback and your thoughts on this, and the whole idea is just to surface this with you, have this talk with you, is to understand what you think. So perhaps like we can have a follow-up conversation on to hear what you were saying, and then we can devise some solutions that's more tailored and also aligned with what you were thinking. So I think, I would say if I were to give my younger self the advice, it would be, when that happens, do not panic and be calm and take a step back and really think about being the solution mode rather than the problem mode. So yeah.
Cool. That's really insightful. Another area as well, which I think probably a lot of people in this room might agree with, is have you noticed any specific areas of businesses that struggle to understand data? And obviously, following from your point really of the CMO just disagreeing, is there any areas really of business that you find struggle to understand analytics and the point of it almost?
It's an interesting question. I guess I've been in tech for quite a long time, and usually tech companies are very data driven, and there's a culture of treating data extremely seriously and having data being the highest priority. So I haven't had this problem for a very long time. I'm trying to think if I had this problem earlier in my career. I guess there were always, like going back to the 4 categories I was mentioning earlier, there were always people who are less interested in general. I think if they're less interested and they're not disagreeing with you, and I think that's not a problem, because you just go find out a route that the people who are in high power, who are interested, and really try to position your project and really work with those people and push your ideas through. But if they are basically detractors and are trying to stop you your work or saying it's not important, then that might be a bit of a problem. I think in that case, again, like I think you want to identify your allies really who are decision makers who are empowered that they can help you. And to give an example, I don't know if it's completely related, but it's also to do with an article I saw accidentally today actually. Sometimes the business, certain functions in the business are working, and but analytics are like, kind of the scapegoat. People are saying it's because the data is wrong, and I've certainly experienced that myself. So it was actually last year, and I was presenting a report, and then there were loads of like heads of different departments as well as the CEO in the meeting. So the report was actually saying that our company at certain parts of the business wasn't really performing very well. But now if you imagine that the heads of the meeting, so they were probably being a bit of a defensive mode. So immediately I had at least 2 or 3 people saying, no, this was not the data that we believe is right. There's definitely something wrong with the data. So in a way, it was questioning the quality of our work and our report, right? So I guess I do remember that was quite tricky when a few people were saying, oh, why is this wrong? Karen, can you go investigate? So I think at that time I just said, I'm sure, like, if I'm glad to hear that you have some opinions, and if it's wrong, could you give me some examples on why, so that I can also go investigate, because there are like millions of roles in the data. It's not, if you're saying it's wrong, it's not possible for me to find out why. So if you're disagreeing with it, you're seeing a different thing, can you give me some examples so I can go work with my team to figure that out? And I think that really helped the conversation, and CEO actually really like that approach as well. I think if you do encounter people who are detracting to you, and it would be good to ask them why they disagree and what was the reason. Ask them to give you some examples, and then you can go back and work from there, I think.
Okay, cool. That's really insightful, and yeah, totally understand. One final question, and I think a lot of people in the room might be asking this as well. Do you think there should be more help learning in place for stakeholder management? Because I find it's kind of a given. It's just expected to deal with a stakeholder. Do you think there should be more training? And if there is, do you know anywhere for training? Yeah, good to hear a bit more.
Yeah, I definitely think people should be given more help, and that's why the reason, like at the very beginning of my intro, I mentioned that one of my responsibilities to upskill my team and help them interact with stakeholders, because I genuinely think a lot of time it's not because they can't deliver a quality piece of work, like in terms of results. It is because that relationship or the way of asking questions or communicating information isn't right. So then it was quite difficult, and then to kind of really maintain a relationship. So I do think, especially people who are starting out their career, they should have been given more help and like hearing what other people have learned. I must admit that I struggled all the way through myself. So a lot of the learnings I just learned by making mistakes. And then later on, I realized actually it's a good tip what I want to share with you, which is to identify some mentors in your company, who ideally are not your manager, and who ideally just basically work in a completely different function, and potentially like in a management position. So ideally also decision makers. I asked for a mentor when I joined Babylon, who have been extremely helpful to me, because number one, it's good for them to act as the sounding board when you're struggling with something like relationship with certain people. They can advise you on that. And secondly, because my mentors was quite very senior in the company, and when I just told her about certain situations, she actually decided to help me with certain projects, even though the projects weren't directly, I wasn't reporting to her and it wasn't directly related to her. So I would say some coaching and help, it should be provided by the company, but if they don't, just ask for it, because I asked for the mentor myself, like it wasn't already through like a kind of mentorship program. I do think a lot of companies give training programs, like so Babylon Health had contract with LinkedIn Learning, which have courses in like soft skills as well. So I do think people should be given more help. But yeah, like I said, I probably just learned by making mistakes.
Yeah. No, exactly, and that's been really insightful. As if some, again, from the non-technical world, it's been really helpful for me, and I'm sure all the people on the call agree. But no, I just want to thank you again. Really appreciate taking the time, Karen. It's been a pleasure working with you the last few years on general stuff as well. But yeah, really interesting piece this, because I said I don't think there's enough said on stakeholder management, and hopefully there is a lot more that can be done as well, just to improve, because I think it can improve anyone in their work life. So as I said, thanks everyone for coming. Really appreciate you all taking time out your busy schedules. If you do have any questions that haven't been answered, please do reach out to myself or Karen. As I said, I'm sure we all connected are on LinkedIn. But be good to catch up again, and thanks again, Karen. Really appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity. Yeah, like Daniel said, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. I'm on LinkedIn, and I'm happy to answer any questions, really. Thank you, and it's lovely seeing you all.
Perfect. Thank you very much. See you later, everyone.
Bye.